Hi, everyone. This first week, I will have a couple of lecture recordings about content that's not in the textbook. The first part is about introduction to advertising. I will start by using a case study, Altoids. I don't know how familiar you guys are about Altoids, but Altoids was created in 1780, and they were properly marketed 215 years later. And the reasons they're not well known until mid-1990s, there are several reasons. First of all, they're quite expensive. They were quite expensive. They were 3 times more than their competitors. And they also have a very narrow distribution. Finally, and this probably is the most important reason, is that there was no advertising for Altoids. So in mid-1990s, Altoid decided that they're going to do some advertising for their products. So they did research and found out that there's some characteristics of their customers. Okay, so they're quite a unique group. So they found that their customers, here are the characteristics: they're young, they're urban, they're socially active, culturally aware, and they were somewhat difficult to reach by conventional advertising media. By conventional, here it means that they're difficult to be reached through TV, radio, newspaper, and magazine. So those were considered conventional media. So this is in mid-1990s. Okay, so let's say if you were going to help Altoids advertise their product, where and how would you advertise, and what aspects of the product would you emphasize? Okay, so 2 questions. First, where and how would you advertise based on their product and also their audience characteristics that I just introduced? And what aspects of the product would you emphasize? Okay, so let's stop here for a second. Just think about this. So Altoids, they, after doing research, they focus on outdoor advertising, which is unconventional. Remember, one of the characteristics of their customers were that they were difficult to reach by conventional advertising media. So that means you need to use unconventional media, and outdoors were unconventional. Okay, so here are some places where they put their ads. So billboards, bus shelters, phone booth, subway cars. And they did that, they did those outdoor advertising for a year. And the result was that there was a substantial increase in brand awareness and consumption. And their brand jumped from number 6 in US breath mint ranking to number 1. So obviously, this campaign was very successful. Most importantly, the ads themselves were great. They were highly creative and just as simple as the media that carried them, focusing on the product's unique, exceptionally strong flavor and its one-of-a-kind tin packaging. The ads generally feature an Altoids signature tin. So if you look at those ads, they all have their signature tin, and with a simple, humorous catchphrase at the bottom. The ads were indicative of the mint, simple, clean, and fresh. So the moral of the story is simple. Good advertising can have a curiously strong effect on a brand's success. So we want to first talk about what is advertising then? What is the definition of advertising? So I will give you a second here just to stop to think about what are some of the characteristics of advertising. So first of all, advertising, they're applied communication. So they can be verbal and they can be nonverbal elements in advertising. They're directed to groups of people rather than to individuals, okay, through mass media. And they're usually paid for by sponsors, except for if it's for nonprofit organization or public service announcement, which is a message in the public interest disseminated by the media without charge to raise public awareness and change behavior. Then they're also persuasive for the most part, and some might be just merely to inform, but mostly they're persuasive. Then they reach us through a channel of communication, some kind of medium. Okay, so what do you think? How would you, based on those characteristics, how would you define advertising? So here's the definition for advertising. They're the structured and composed non-personal communication of information, usually paid for and usually persuasive in nature about products, whether it's goods, services, and ideas, by identified sponsors through various media. Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about is human communication process, and I'm going to use a chart to illustrate that. Okay, so for communication students, you might be familiar with this chart because I have used it in various classes. So first of all, it's very important to have the source of your message. So source could be also the sender. So source of the your message. So when the source or the sender sending the information, they will encode their message. Okay, so they will try to interpret their message, which we call encode the message. And then the most important thing in communication is the message itself. Okay, so the message here, if you want to apply it to advertising, it's the ads, it's the message. And you need to use some kind of channel to transmit your message. Okay, so while you're transmitting, there are different kinds of noises. So it could be, noises could be several things. So for instance, when the TV commercials, your target audience or the consumers, they might be distracted by something happening in the house. Okay, so that could be a noise. Another noise could be some other commercials by other sponsors competing with your message. So that could be noise as well. And then before the message reached the receiver, then the receiver will decode the message. Okay, and then finally, when they decode the message will reach the receiver. The problem is that the sender or the source, the way they encode the message is not always the same as the receiver decoding the message. Okay, so the source might mean one thing, but the receiver, when they get the message, they interpret differently. So that's why there's miscommunication. And then later researchers add this element, feedback, which is very important, that make the communication process a loop process. Okay, so when you have the feedback, then the receiver, once they give the feedback to the sender or the source, they become the sender, right? And the source now, they become the receiver. And so the loop goes on, and there's no beginning or there's no ending. Okay, so what would happen if we apply this communication process to advertising? So they are reflected in three different dimensions. Okay, so if you apply the human communication process to advertising, you will see three dimensions. The first dimension we call source dimensions. Okay, so each dimension has three parts. So in the source dimension, the first is you have the sponsor. So that's the advertiser, somebody who will pay for the ads. Okay, so the sponsor. The second party involved is the author. So that's the creator of the ad. Okay, so it can be the creative team, advertising agency, whoever creates the ads. And then the third party is called persona. So that could be the real or imaginary spokesperson. Okay, oftentimes we use celebrity to be the spokesperson. So I'm going to show you an ad, and so if you guys read my self intro, I told you that I am a big soccer fan. So the ad you guys, commercial you guys just watched, it was actually almost a copy of 1979 commercial for Coca-Cola. So the one that I just showed you was for Pepsi, right? So it was actually kind of copied from a 1979 Coca-Cola commercial, and the star Minjo Green, who is a Steelers player, football player. And this particular ad was aired for Major League Baseball playoffs, and then later on was in the Super Bowl. And it was voted by the audience as the most heartwarming commercial. So the story is very similar. Minjo was injured from the game, and then a kid offer him the Coca-Cola, and the Minjo drink the Coca-Cola and feel better. So with the soccer one that I just showed you, it starred David Beckham, one of the most well-known soccer player. And but the twist is, in the end, the kid reluctantly give David Beckham the drink, but then he want the shirt. So in the Minjo commercial, Minjo give the kid the jersey, and the kid was very excited because he was a big fan. But here the kid was actually using it to wipe off the can, because he was a Juventus fan. Juventus is a Italian team. Okay. So that is an example of persona. So usually it is the spokesperson. And the next one is dimension is message dimensions. Once again, there's three different dimensions, message dimensions. So the first one is called autobiography. Autobiography is when I tell a story about myself to you, who are the imaginary audience eavesdropping on my private personal experience. Okay, I will show you examples later on, but I'll go through those three dimensions first. The second is called narrative. Narrative is a third person persona, and this third person is very well informed and has the authoritative quality. So this third person tells a story about others to an imagined audience. Okay, so the final one is drama. Drama uses a style of theater to create or perform a scene. So the audience receive the message by implication rather than direct telling. So the characters act out events directly in front of an imagined empathetic audience. Okay, so I will show you, those are some print ads. Those 4 ads actually won Cannes International Advertising Festival. And so we'll go through one by one. The first one is the example of autobiography. So that is when I tell a story about myself to you, who are the imaginary audience eavesdropping on my private personal experience. So this old lady, she's telling her life story. Okay, so in this text, here it's very small, so you can't really see, but it says 7 husbands that didn't work and 1 toaster that did. God moves in mysterious ways for life, not just for weddings. Okay, so that means the toaster is very endurable. And so that was the first ad using the autobiography message dimension. So the old lady is telling her story to the imaginary audience. The second one here is the narrative. Okay, so the other message dimension. So you can see that this is actually an ad for clothes detergent. Okay, so this auto mechanic, he was wearing a white suit on the floor. So of course it's going to get very dirty, but it doesn't matter because he has this magic detergent that he can use. So the text at the bottom here, it says, don't be afraid, okay, because the detergent is magic. It can clean anything. This third one, that's a drama. And this is used a style of theater to create or perform a scene. So the audience receive the message by implication rather than direct telling. Okay, so the characters act out events directly in front of an imagined empathetic audience. So you can see that there was a car accident. Okay, so the words here says on the windshield, it says, please don't speed near schools. Okay, and so that is the drama. And the last one, number 4, it's a mixture of those different kinds. Here, I think it's more autobiography and plus drama and a little bit narrative as well. So the words here, tiny words here, it says, my mom's going to kill me. My mom is going to kill me. And then here at the bottom here, it says, 1 condom saves both lives. Okay, so once again, this little girl, she's telling her life story to the audience. And also it's using a drama as well to tell the story. Okay, so those are the examples of those message dimensions. And all right, so let's go back to the dimension again. So the last one after message dimension is receiver dimension. Remember the chart, human communication process chart? It's the beginning is the source, and then in the middle it's a message, in the end it's a receiver. So in advertising, this is how it's applied. Okay, so in the receiver dimensions, that again, there are 3 dimensions. So the first one is implied consumers. Okay, so who are addressed by the ads persona. They're not real. They're imagined by the ads creators to be ideal consumers who accept in whatever beliefs the text requires. Okay, so they're imagined consumers or ideal consumers that the creator basically created. The second dimension is sponsorial consumers. So this is a group of decision makers and the gatekeepers at the sponsors company or organization who decide if the ad will run or not. So those are the people who are advertisers, so who work in the company, sponsors company, and they're going to decide, okay, this is good. I want you to change this and change that because they're paying for it. The third dimension for receiver is actual consumers. So those are the people in the real world who comprise the ad's target audience. Actual consumers, they do not usually think or behave the same as the implied consumer or even the sponsor consumer. Thus, the advertisers and the creative team, they must be concerned about how the actual consumer will decode or interpret the message. Complicating this problem is the fact that the sponsor's advertising message must compete with hundreds of other commercials and non-commercial messages every day. That is what we call noise, showed in that chart. Okay. So that's why feedback is so important. It completes the cycle. And the technology changed the way the consumers give feedback. So before we include that feedback, so if it's like a commercial, TV commercials, so it's just one-way communication, right? So you show that commercial to the audience. So the audience tend to be passive. Now, because we include the feedback and we have a lot of interactive media now, so the audience become active. So it becomes two-way communication. Okay, so I'm going to stop this first part, the introduction of advertising here, and then I will start the second part in another video.